Please be seated. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to invite Mr. Chris Tobin, representative of the Darug people, to offer traditional welcome to country.
Thank you. Warame Nalawa. Hello and welcome to the lands of the Wallamedigal. I belong to one of the local Aboriginal families of the Darug people, the traditional custodians over this part of the country. I wish to thank the University for their acknowledgement of us and for the invitation to welcome you here tonight. That acknowledgement is important for our people and much appreciated, particularly by our elders. My family descend from Yarramundi, a respected elder and cleverman of the Brewer clan during the early years of colonisation. He saw that our survival in this new world could best be secured if we could learn more about it. As such, he enrolled his daughter, Maria, into the Native Institution, a school set up in 1815 by Governor Macquarie himself, offering formal education to Aboriginal children. She studied there for several years and used her newly acquired skills to lobby and ultimately secure some land for herself and her family out along the Richmond Road. Other Aboriginal families soon joined them, and it became known as the Blackstown, where the present-day city of Blacktown gets its name from. We are very proud of her, as I'm sure your families are of you here today. And with good reason. Your progress progresses us all. Your advancement is our advancement. Now, that was perhaps more readily understood in traditional times when clan groups were smaller and abided by strict sharing laws. Meant that the food that you caught and brought back got distributed throughout the rest of the camp. Your skills and good fortune were thus enjoyed by all, and your efforts literally nourished the rest of the community. Yes, we can live quite beautifully when we get it right. Our Aboriginal ancestors certainly lived well in many respects, and I use occasions like this to offer them to yourselves as a benchmark or a model on how good to expect our lives today. You see, when Captain Cook arrived here a little over 200 years ago, he described the people he encountered at Botany Bay as one of the happiest people he had met in the world. They had nothing, he wrote, but the tools that they carried. They were naked. They used the bark of trees for shelters rather than cutting them down, and harvested food from the earth without tilling it. In traditional times, everyone was accorded rights to the clan country where he or she was born into. So there was no homelessness. Everyone had a home. And there was no rich and poor either. Everyone had pretty much the same amount of gear, what you could carry. We had no armies or jails or even police. We have no history of slavery or empire building. People cooperated to collect the resources that were needed, and then they were strictly shared out according to Aboriginal law. Our lands were maintained in the natural state. Rivers were clean and unpolluted, with people drinking out of them as they have done here for the past 20,000 years. Now remember, this is not an ideal, this is normal life. And there's no reason why we should expect less for ourselves and our children than what our ancestors enjoyed. So I would say to you, expect a great future and work for a great future. I believe there's still a lot of magic in the world, and I think working together, making sure all of us are looked after, is a way to secure a country and a future worthy of our children. We can do this. We can all do our bit. I'll do mine now by winding up and letting you good people graduate. Right, congratulations to all of you, and all the best in our collective futures. Thank you. Welcome to country.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to introduce the Chancellor of Macquarie University, the Honourable Michael Egan AO.
Thank you, Chris Tobin, for your welcome to country. Well, graduands, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and I noticed today also we have a lot of boys and girls, little ones, and we have lots of little babies. There's even a very freshly hatched one over there of about 6 weeks of age. Now, one thing's certain with little children, and particularly babies, during an hour-and-a-half ceremony, they'll make a noise, and they're most welcome to do it. Please don't feel that you have to take them outside. We often notice that parents position themselves strategically so they can beat a hasty retreat when the baby starts to cry. Don't worry, we've discovered from experience that the louder and the longer a baby wails throughout a graduation ceremony, the more likely he or she is to come back within 25 years to pick up their first PhD. So we encourage it. Well, first let me welcome all of our graduands. It's a very great privilege for me to preside at an important graduation like this. And I hope that this will be a very happy and memorable occasion for all of you. And it is only going to be a happy occasion if you all relax. You're, as a group, older than the normal group of just out of school undergraduates we usually have. So you've probably been through all this before, so you'll know there's no reason not to be relaxed. You've passed all your exams, you've submitted all your assignments. The only thing that can go wrong is you might fall over when you come up here on the stadium. Well, that's okay. We've got that covered. That's why all these people are here. They'll pick you up and send you on your way. So there's really nothing to worry about. Just have a great time. You deserve to take pride, great pride in your graduation. And looking at you, I suspect most of you are fronting up for the second or perhaps the third time. And as you will know, it's a lot more difficult when you are combining studies with family responsibilities and work responsibilities than it was when you were an 18-year-old undergraduate with none of the responsibilities that you have now. So you really do deserve to take a lot of pride in today's graduation. Completing a degree is never easy. You need an intelligent and inquiring mind. You need determination and perseverance, and you need to make many sacrifices. So welcome and congratulations to each and every one of you. Today I also want to welcome and especially welcome those of you who are sitting over there or behind our graduands as their invited guests. Because when you think about it for a moment or two, you've all obviously done very well also. The fact that you're here, the fact that you've been invited by one of our graduands to share one of the great days of their lives is proof positive that you've been very important in their lives and in the successes that we celebrate today. So mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, cousins, sons and daughters, grandmothers and grandfathers, friends, husbands and wives, partners, boyfriends, girlfriends, lovers or whatever you are, congratulations and thank you for celebrating this great occasion with us. And I don't want you to think either that observing today's graduation is the end of your role. I have another important service for you to perform for our newest graduates, as they'll soon become. I want you to make sure that the degrees they receive today are never ever put in a bottom drawer, but are always proudly displayed in a position of prominence. And by the way, if their current degrees are not also displayed in a position of prominence, you go and find them and you put them up on a wall somewhere so everyone can see them. Well, now the ceremony that we're about to participate in is one of the world's oldest social rituals. For centuries, graduates have been donning robes just like the ones our graduands are wearing today and participating in ceremonies just like this one. Indeed, there are some 50 universities in the world which can trace their history back more than 500 years. Now, of course, Macquarie University is not one of them. We're relatively very young. This year, in fact, is our 50th Jubilee. And in those 50 years, we've come a long way. We now have graduates living in more than 140 countries, and this week, perhaps next week, we will celebrate our 150,000th graduate. So that will be quite a milestone. Macquarie is a very modern and outward-looking university. We're regarded as one of Australia's leading research universities, and rightly so, and we're currently extending our research as we are our course offerings and our facilities. We're always trying to engage with the world around us. We've forged strong alliances with the community and with industry and commerce, and are keen to establish more. We've acquired a lot of new facilities in recent years. You might have seen some of them on your way here this evening. One of them is our Macquarie University Hospital, where it's a 180-bed hospital. We're the only university in Australia with its own private hospital. We don't have an undergraduate medical course, we have a postgraduate medical course, and therefore the hospital, as well as being used for its primary purpose of treating sick people, is also used by the students and the professional and academic staff in our School of Advanced Medicine. But I can assure you that the care that they offer is absolutely first class, and I can assure you that from personal experience. I was a patient for 3 days late last year, and the care is absolutely excellent, especially if you're the Chancellor. We also have our fairly new library, which is very popular with our students, and just this year we've opened some areas in the old library for, I suppose you call them informal learning spaces. We're doing some research with them, and they're fantastic. They're proving very popular too. We also have our Advanced Hearing Hub, which was opened last year and which is a world's leading institute dedicated to advances in hearing, speech and language sciences. So we're looking forward and we're on the move. We want Macquarie always to be a leader in teaching and learning and a leader in the accumulation of knowledge and understanding. In other words, an ideal community of scholars. And graduands, in just a few minutes, it will be my very great honour to confer your degrees upon you and welcome you as lifelong members of that community of scholars we proudly call Macquarie University. Thank you.
Chancellor, I call on Dr Matthew Carl Rosen, who's graduating today with a Master of Business Administration, to speak on behalf of the graduating group. Dr Rosen.
Chancellor, members of the university, fellow graduates and guests. I'd like to start by sharing with you a profound statement that reflects my feeling on this most auspicious of occasions. It is as follows. My greatest regret in life is not being able to see myself perform live on stage. I empathise with this statement, not because I actually want to see myself up here, but because it's just so darn hard to sleep through a graduation speech when you're actually presenting it. So I will try to make this interesting. When I started reflecting on the MBA, I realised I could distill my thoughts down to two fundamental questions. Firstly, what is the MBA actually about? Secondly, now that I've completed the MBA, what are my responsibilities to society and to myself? After much reflection, the answers presented themselves in the most unlikely of places. 3 quotes from the self-proclaimed philosopher for the simple man, but more about him later. So what is the MBA actually about? We all start at MGSM with differing ideas of what the MBA will deliver. Some envisage the power. Some foresee the money. Some anticipate the respect and credibility it will bring. But it should be clear to you all that the MBA alone won't deliver these benefits. So what is the MBA actually about? The answer can be found in the first quote from our philosopher for the simple man. And it is as follows. I was never really good at anything except for the ability to learn. The MBA is actually proof to ourselves that we have the ability to learn quickly, to learn under demanding timelines, and to learn from others. Confidence in our ability to learn, to take the challenging tasks, to look back, to back ourselves when no one else will, is what will enable us to succeed and become masters of business administration, not because a piece of paper says so. And what about your responsibilities to society? Some would say it's an unfortunate and scary fact that the torch of civilization will be handed to us generation X and Ys, a bunch of rabble who generally won't do what they are told and think they know everything, which is just as well. As we speak, the old rules of business are breaking. The West is declining. The East is rising. Australia may not always be the lucky country. Which brings me to the second quote from our philosopher. He said, "I didn't always want to play it boring and safe." As the next generation of business leaders, if we play it boring and safe rather than entrepreneurial, if we think local instead of global, and if we simply follow business leaders of the past instead of using our ability to learn and rejuvenate Australian business, then the future is indeed bleak. But I have faith that the class of 2014 won't allow this to happen. And finally, what are our responsibilities to yourself? We have all made sacrifices to complete the MBA. Some miss birthdays, kids' weekend sport. Some might have even missed anniversaries. So please remember this final quote from our philosopher as you're leaving here today. When you play this game of life, you need to appreciate every moment. A lot of people don't appreciate the moment until it's past. So while we're busy getting out there and rejuvenating business, we must not forget to also live for the moment. And in particular, we must not forget that we have a responsibility to share these moments with those that are here today, our parents, partners, and our children. Some of you may be wondering who this self-proclaimed philosopher for the simple man is, and I'm about to tell you. He won't be found in any textbook you bought at MGSM. He doesn't even read books. He didn't even go to university. And for the record, I don't like his music. That's right, it's Kanye West. A rapper whose insightful lyrics include such pearls as, "I'm a god," and "Hey mum, I'm on TV." But the point is this, don't judge a book by its cover. And don't ever let having an MBA go to your head. Even someone who on the surface appears simple can also teach you something about life. In closing, Kanye has one more statement about life that seems relevant to this most auspicious of occasions. And it is as follows. Sometimes when I see a bad performance and people still clap, I wonder if they're clapping because they like what they saw or because they're happy it's over. I'll let you ponder that one. Thank you and congratulations on completing your MBA.
Well, thank you very much for that, Matthew, and you are quite right. No matter what or how much or how many qualifications you have, don't think you know everything, and never ever underestimate the intelligence or the wisdom of people who haven't had your opportunities and haven't had the opportunity to acquire the knowledge that you've acquired. So congratulations on a very good speech. Now, Matthew, this is his third degree. He's got a doctorate, now an MBA. But Matthew, just because you've got 3 degrees doesn't mean you can't come back for a 4th one. So we'll be very glad to see you back. Well, ladies and gentlemen, graduands, we now come to the part of the ceremony, which is the bit that makes me a bit nervous, because I'm assured on the best legal advice in the country that if I confer a degree on someone who's not entitled to get it, I can't take it back. So for that reason, I always call upon one of our Deputy Vice-Chancellors and our Registrar, Deidre Anderson, to give me an absolutely ironclad assurance that you're all eligible to graduate today and that none of you ever missed a class or were ever late in submitting an assignment. So, Deidre, can you give me that assurance?
Chancellor, I certify that all of the candidates presented here today and those who are absent have satisfied the requirements of Academic Senate for the degrees and diplomas they are to be awarded. Would all candidates for admission to degrees and diplomas please stand?
That's it. Takes a bit of convincing sometimes, doesn't it, that you've... In the name of the Council of Macquarie University and by my authority as Chancellor, I admit each of you present and those who are absent to the degrees and diplomas for which you have qualified. Graduates, congratulations.
Will you please be seated? Chancellor, The graduates at this ceremony are from the Macquarie Graduate School of Management. The Macquarie Graduate School of Management has a comprehensive suite of postgraduate, customised corporate and executive education programs, which cover a wide range of contemporary disciplines, offering participants an opportunity to specialise or to develop skills required for a career in general management. By linking practical, real-world experiences with leading management theories and principles from around the globe, the school provides executives with a learning experience that transcends the traditional boundaries of business school. Chancellor, I now call on Professor Alex Freno, the Dean of Macquarie Graduate School of Management, to present the graduates. Professor Freno.
Chancellor, I present to you the graduates from the Macquarie Graduate School of Management whom you have admitted to degrees. I present graduates admitted to the degree of Doctor of Philosophy. Dr. Linda Juliana Machula, for a thesis entitled Organisational Theatre and Polyphony, the use of theatre as an artist-led intervention in organisational change. Dr. Amanda Mead, for a thesis entitled Identity and Sentient Emotions at Work. Dr. Arash Najmeh Lonbani, for a thesis entitled Leading Growth, CEO's Cognition, Knowledge Acquisition and Business Model Innovation in Face of Dynamism. Dr. Zara Sadanija Kakavandi, for a thesis entitled Top Management Team Diversity and Film Performance, the Effects of Team Orientation and Process, a study of Australian SMEs. Dr. Ekaterina Borisovna Todarello, for a thesis entitled The Many Faces of Workplace Spirituality, a hermeneutic inquiry into the four worldviews as contexts of the employee-organisation relationships and conduits for spirit manifesting. Dr. Wei Wah Yim, for a thesis entitled A New Model of Entrepreneurship with Entrepreneurial Leadership Capacity for High Technology Venture Creation, a biotechnology industry application. Dr. Chuck Man Kewen, for a thesis entitled Understanding the Prevalence of the Boundaryless Career Perspectives and its Implications for Employee Turnover and Talent Retention. Dr. Antonio Elinon, for a thesis entitled Technology-Based Accounting Innovation, Implications for Accountants and Organisations. I present graduates admitted to the degree of Master of Business Administration. Tema Abdelati. David Balance. Benjamin Bartlett. Zia Rukshana Basha. Selena Rinku Bhatta. Paul Jonathan Bellantonio. Fiona Mary Jane Benson. Aditya Bardwaj. Marcelo Raul Blanchard. Helen Elizabeth Bourne. James Edward Brogan. Matthew Vincent Brown. Lucy Sharmi. Matthew Robert Chandler. Geeta Wati Sharan. Amanda Christine Charlton. Jose Lorenzo Craviotto Hernandez. Raquella Louise Curtis. Guy Oliver de Tourettes. Dante Monte Moye de Villa. Baron Andrew Delforce. Teja Sunil Deshpande. Mark Graham Dixon. Wok Tu Yang. Nigel Francis Elsmore. Brett Clint Ezra. Matthew Constantine Galanos. Myrtle Kumar Gangwa. Karen Michelle Maria Grace. Glenn Anthony Guzzo. Mark Christian Hansen. Daniel James Holloway. Paul David Hurley. Andrew Peter Innes. George Zaki Zraj. Abhishake Hakarian. Heidi Gabrielle Kenda. Abdullah Noor Udin Khan. Tony La. Chi Hao Lam. Ying Hu Lee. Yessa Maghrabi. Maria Margarita Maldonado Pinzon. Radha Bai Managoran. Andrew Craig Matters. Christopher Brian McCullum. Sean Michael McGinty. Dominic McEwen. Lynn Maria McLean. Mihir Milind Medika. Damien George Michael. Andrew McHale. Okay. Pez Moradi. Emma Jane Morgan. Hari Haran Nalia. Julie New. Brendan James Ng. Margie Lai Ying Ng. Nathan John Norrie. Ruben Ivan Olivares Pardo. Nilandri Shekhar Pal. Nathan Philip Petrie. Benjamin Reardon. Jason Clark Renaidel. Simon Francis Rowe. Matthew Carl Rosen. Wendy Marguerite Sadler Moyes. Adesh Singh Kandari. Michael Chi Yu So. Reiji Christina Solomons. Gary Ko Ching Tan. Erin Tapfield. Mark Daniel Tepperson. Christopher John Tooley. Keith James Walsh. Jingjing Wang. Pei Wang. Rebecca Catherine Ward. Catherine Jane Weston. Malcolm Stewart Wood. William B. W. Shue. Julia Olivia Zanstra. James Helmut Aguilar. Gonyamila May Leon Chinook Aponzo. Teresa Irene Balance. Jeremy Barrientos. Susan Barwick. Rachel Elizabeth Brophy. Susan Ann Catania. Juliet Marie Cockerell. Sarah Kate Francis Evans. Mark Andrew Fletcher. Harsha Madhuranga Kumara Gamatije. Delilah Gerby. Matthew Oswald Hardy. Sivapalan Hesavan. Michael Charles Hudson. Cheryl Ann Kavana. Imrana Khan. Mark Gerard Clouvens. John Leard. Sondos Meyer. Stephen Andrew Manton. Nicholas John Menzies. Anna Mistylis. Jeffrey Michael Morris. Dean Michael Mulheron. Ziha Grace Eng. Okay. Mauro Guglielmo Pino. Sheetal Purohit. Damien Douglas Reid. Emilia Zarkesians. Gregory Small. No? James Shakespeare. That's better. You're good. Gregory Small. Jacek Krzysztof Sobczyk, who has been awarded the Vice-Chancellor's Commendation for Academic Excellence. Congratulations. Nigel Bruce Alexander Stephen. Abhilasha Thakur. Amanda Louise Town. Sharon Elizabeth West. Joshua Colin Wilkinson. Brendan Scott Wright. I present the diplomates awarded the Postgraduate Diploma in Management. Simon Andre Ola. I present the diplomate awarded the Postgraduate Diploma in Operations Management. David Donald Lamb. I present diplomates awarded the Postgraduate Diploma of Management. Michael Guy Chapman. Sufei Chen. Brinda Credaro. Reswanul Haak. Ariane Michaelides. Ryans Ravanesh Prasad. Daniel Joseph Sandrin. Anita Sardalich. Christine Jane Toohey. Kapil Vaswani. Chancellor, that completes this evening's presentation of the graduates from the Macquarie Graduate School of Management.
Well, now, that wasn't too bad, was it? That glorious voice, ladies and gentlemen, belongs to Angela Brewer. And I have to tell you, you've been very fortunate tonight to hear Angela singing at the graduation ceremony, because on the occasions that Angela can't come, I do the singing. Would you like to hear Angela sing just a little bit more? Okay, what you've got to do is enrol in another degree, and when you come back, she'll be singing at your next graduation. I think she deserves another great round of applause. As do our fabulous musicians on the organ over there, Dr. James Forsyth. And on the Chinese flute, Chai Chang Ning. And I've got to say, I don't think I've been to a graduation with quite as many children or babies, and they made exactly the right amount of noise, and I think they deserve a round of applause too. So, by the way, and I think we've got some ice creams for the kids later too, and for people like me. So, now, as part of this graduation ceremony, we honour a member of staff from the Faculty of Science who's made outstanding contributions to student learning at Macquarie University. I now call upon the Vice-Chancellor of Macquarie University, Professor Bruce Doughton, to read the citation. Professor Doughton.
Chancellor, it gives me great pleasure to invite Dr. Debbie Haskey-Leventhal to come forward. Dr. Debbie Haskey-Leventhal is a 2013 winner of the Vice-Chancellor's Award for Teaching Excellence. Dr. Haskey-Leventhal lectures in ethics and social responsibility and develops her students to be leaders that are capable, sustainable and responsible. In a relatively short time at the Macquarie Graduate School of Management, she has taught hundreds of students, developed new elective units, has led a new cross-university master's degree in social entrepreneurship, and developed, coordinated and taught a core online unit. She actively seeks student feedback to improve both her content and teaching delivery. Dr. Haskey-Leventhal has also made an impact beyond the MGSM and Macquarie University, as she leads the Corporate Social Responsibility Partnership Network, edits the Journal of Business, Peace and Sustainable Development, and works with the UN Global Compact and Principles for Responsible Management Education. She is also involved in a National Office for Learning and Teaching Innovation and Development Program grant. Chancellor, I present to you a truly worthy recipient of the Vice-Chancellor's Award for Teaching Excellence, Dr. Debbie Haskey-Leventhal from the Macquarie Graduate School of Management.
Well, graduates and ladies and gentlemen, it's now my pleasure to introduce our occasional speaker, Mr. Richard Kimber. Now, Richard Kimber is a graduate from the MGSM way back in 1993 at the young age of 23. He's had a very diverse international career centred on the business application of technology. He's progressed to hold several chief executive and board roles in stockbroking, retail banking and internet companies. He's worked in Hong Kong, New York and the UK and has had roles with the ASX, Macquarie Bank, HSBC, First Direct Bank UK, and after 18 interviews, Richard became the first regional managing director for Google in Southeast Asia. More recently, Richard was the Chief Operating Officer of Global Markets and Loans at ANZ Bank, with $4 billion in revenue and operations around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Richard Kimber.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to acknowledge the Chancellor and the Vice-Chancellor, the faculty, students, of course, and all the family and friends for coming along tonight. It's been quite a while since I graduated, as Michael said, but I do remember it pretty well. It was a moment that I was particularly proud of, and I think it's something you all should be very proud of as well. It's one of those great milestones in your life that you will reflect on and look back on with great fondness. I think achievements should be celebrated, and it's something I enjoy doing, and it's something I've enjoyed doing with my family and friends. But it's also a time to take stock and to evaluate where you're up to in your life and to think about what comes next. For me, when I was sitting in the audience, as you are this evening, I thought about my future and my career and what I'd like to achieve. And as I sat there, I thought, well, it'd be great to become a managing director, to be able to run a business from end to end, to be able to do all the different functional areas, control the P&L and do the whole end-to-end business. And as management students, that's probably what you all aspire to. So sitting there, thinking about the future, I started to think about what I would achieve. One of the things I didn't think about, though, was in what area and what industry. I was pretty open to that, and as you heard from my career, I've done a range of different things. So there's no way, as I sat there, I thought about my future, that I would be the CEO in an internet industry, and certainly not in a social media company, as I went on to become. In fact, when I sat there in 1993, we barely knew what the internet was. We didn't get to use that for our degrees. So one of the first things I'd like to talk about is the future is going to be different to what it is right now. It seems pretty obvious. But the one thing that has happened is that technology has influenced everything we do. And it's certainly evolved in the workplace. And it's changed the way work happens. It's changed the kinds of roles that we have. And it's certainly changed the industries that exist. If you look at the large companies now, many of them didn't exist. They certainly didn't exist when I did my MBA. Google wasn't even a small imagination at that stage. And when you think about the future and you think about the fact that it is going to be different to what we know now and what we've learnt in our degrees, and I reflect on the earlier speech which said that really all you've really learnt in your MBA or your Masters in Management is you've learnt how to learn. And if you think about things to have in your pocket, it's a pretty good thing to have. If you know how to learn, that's pretty good. One of the things that I did when I reflected on that and started out my career was I had to learn how to lead. And that's a pretty obvious thing when you think about most of our roles, is you come out of your MBA and you're pretty good at managing probably, you know all the theory, and then you've got to get out there and actually put it into practice. And as we learned in our course, management is one thing, but leadership's entirely different. Because to be a great leader, you need to have followers. And as I started out in my career, I quickly learned that following doesn't come naturally, and that in fact you have to earn the right for people to follow you. And as I took over my first really big job in the UK, running the First Direct Bank, I went into an organisation that was very successful, been around for a long time, but I walked in as an unknown, an outsider. And there were 4,000 sceptical Yorkshiremen and women in Leeds and Glasgow, and they all wondered who I was and what gave me the right to be their leader. So as we looked at the company and did the evaluation on what we should do in terms of getting the company back on track, getting the staff re-engaged, we came up with a big plan. But the plan was only as good as its implementation. And so we set about and worked on a way to get all of the whole company engaged in the plan. And we got 4,000 people sitting together in small groups of 50 or so. And one night when I was up in Glasgow, and it was about 2 degrees, I was dressed in a kilt, as all of the management were, sort of not quite like these uniforms, but something similar. And stood up there and we talked all about the company's plans and what we were going to do. And the audience was warming to me, and I thought, well, this is looking good. And we got to the end of the talk, and people really liked the strategy and what we were going to do. And then I had a question from the audience, and it was from one of the ladies in the call centre up in Glasgow. And she said to me, "Are ye a true Scotsman?" And I sort of scratched my head and thought, what does she mean? Does she mean, have I got any underwear on? Because when you wear a kilt, you're not supposed to wear underwear. Or did she mean, are you one of us? Are you really one of us? And can you really lead us to the next stage of the company's growth? And at that moment, I realised that I was starting to get somewhere with this team. And the next morning when I walked into the call centre in Leeds, which was quite some ways away, as I walked across the call centre, I heard a wolf whistle and a few people sniggering in the corner. And I realised that the team was starting to embrace me and that I was starting to get somewhere. So the point of that story is really just talking about my experiences leading people and really learning that, without people's engagement and without them respecting you, you really don't have a lot of show. As we sat in that business as well, we looked at all the threats to our business, and one of them was technology. And we sat there one day in a conference room and said, imagine if this bank had the technology that Google has with our banking license and our great customer service. Well, couldn't you create a fantastic company? And we said, well, we could create this thing called Google Bank. So we thought that would be pretty good. And as it turned out, a few short months later, I got the opportunity to interview for the role to join Google. And it was a pretty arduous process, many interviews and lots of different people to talk to and impress and so on. And we got to the end of the process, and the very last interview was with the chairman of Google, Eric Schmidt. And so it had been a whole process to get up to this point. We went into a very small room, and Eric and I, there were two chairs. I sat down, and Eric turned to me and he said, well, very nice to meet you, Richard Kimber. Take a seat. And he said to me, the way that I like to do interviews is that you ask the questions. There's no time limit. I've got all day. And then when you're done with your questions, I'll let you know how you went and tell you if you got the job or not. So luckily, I'd done a bit of preparation. As my wife likes to say, I'm a bit of an over-preparer. So I had pages and pages of questions there, including one of them, which was, why is a picture of Bill Gates up on the wall if you're the chairman of Google? And he said it was a joke by one of the engineers. One of the engineers thought it would be funny to put a picture of Bill Gates in Eric Schmidt's office. But what it did do was he said it inspired him. It inspired him every day to go on the mission of as he'd said to me, the mission of Google at that stage was to kill Microsoft. So not a particularly socially aware goal, but certainly something that motivated Eric. But it taught me another lesson, and that lesson was to expect the unexpected and ultimately to question everything. Because as Eric did to me, he turned the roles around. He asked me to interview him as opposed to him interviewing me. I've learned in many of my different roles that it's not always what you expect is what's going to happen. And so that preparedness to take on the challenge is really what sets people apart. So as you embrace on the next stage in your career, I'd really encourage you to question things. Question why things are done the way they are. And if you can make a change, do it. I've found in my career, many people are happy to accept the status quo. And there's only a few of us who are happy to challenge. So I encourage you to do that as you go forward. Many people ask me, how could you work at Google and then how could you leave Google? And if I got $1 from everyone who'd asked me that question, I'd be a really rich person. Because it's a very common question. And although Google is a great company, a fantastic company, I wanted to return to my roots, to be that general manager, to be the CEO. And this is another part of the story, which is, you have to run your own race. You can't follow someone else's path. And for me, as much as I like being the Google guy and people referring to you as, that guy who works at Google, ultimately, I was running a region, a big geographic region, but I wasn't running the company. And so that's why I wanted to return to being a CEO. So then I went on to run a social media company called Friendster, which was the original social network. Many of you probably haven't heard of it, but it predated Facebook. And that was a huge jump, a huge change, and a big challenge. But what it did do was it woke me back up into being the general manager I wanted to be, and it was a fantastic challenge. And as I reflect back on it, I think if I'd stayed at Google, I would have not been as happy as I was going into a much smaller, more challenging environment. Similarly, as I've now gone back into a corporate role, it presents different challenges. And ultimately, it's not the job itself but it's what you're getting out of it that matters. So I'd encourage you to open your mind to different opportunity, and certainly to think through different opportunities as they present themselves. And finally, I wanted to leave you with probably the biggest learning that I've made along the way. And sitting here, 21 years after I sat there, it seems like just yesterday. The most important thing about your work is to make sure that it's meaningful. And ultimately, that's easy to say and hard to do. And by that I mean, when you come up with a company slogan, or you come up with your team motto, or you think about next year's challenge, it has to be grounded in meaning. And by that, I mean what means something to your customers, to your team, to your staff, and to your stakeholders. Not something that means something in a textbook or means something on paper, but actually is shallow and hollow and doesn't resonate with the people you're working with. Because ultimately, the things that you'll look back on are the people you've met, the connections you've made, and ultimately it's the memories that you hold that will matter. So with that, I'd like to congratulate you all. Well done on your achievements, and I look forward to seeing and hearing more about your future achievements in the future. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Richard. That was a fascinating address, and it certainly contained some great advice. You certainly have had a very interesting and successful career, and it's always great to see our alumni who have that success in the world, and I hope that it's something that the rest of you will be able to emulate. But for all of what Richard said, we're still none the wiser. Was he wearing anything under the kilt or not? But Richard, thank you. That really was a great address. I enjoyed it very much. And as I say, it's certainly great to see graduates of Macquarie do so well. Now, Richard now works for the ANZ Bank, so there's plenty of jobs with the ANZ Bank. You've just got to see him later. Well, now, graduates, this ceremony marks the end of one stage in your relationship with Macquarie, but it's certainly, I hope, not the end of your association with Macquarie University. From today on, for the rest of your lives, you are part of the bigger Macquarie family, which is our alumni, and part of the network of 150,000 Macquarie alumni who now span the globe. We'll keep in touch with you through our alumni program, which is focused on lifelong learning, lifelong support, and lifelong connections. Our commitment to you is to help you keep in touch and engaged with Macquarie throughout your life. So please do make sure you come back to Macquarie, either to undertake more study, perhaps attend alumni events, use our aquatic and our fitness facilities, or even if the mood takes you, just to come back with family and friends and perhaps enjoy a picnic down by our lake. Well, now, graduates, the award of a university degree carries many opportunities and privileges, but like all privileges, it also carries responsibilities. Believe it or not, you, each and every one of you, can change the world. And you don't have to be a Nobel Prize winner to do it either. Because almost everything you do, in your homes, in your workplaces, and in your communities matters and can make a huge difference. The consequences of every effort and every action, large or small, can reverberate throughout society, through the decades, indeed sometimes the centuries. Even something as simple as a kind word or a kind gesture can often be the spark that ignites a great life or a great career or a great achievement. So as Chancellor of Macquarie University, I charge you to use what you have learned, not only for your own benefit, but also for the betterment of our communities. I charge you to use the skills and knowledge you have acquired with rigour and integrity, and to commit yourselves to a program of lifelong learning and inquiry. I charge you to recognise the worth and dignity of all people, particularly those who have not had the opportunities that you've enjoyed. I charge you to set high goals and to continue the hard work that has brought you so far. And in all you do, I charge you to uphold the good name of Macquarie University. Graduates, I hope also that you'll always remember the people who've helped you along the way, many of whom, of course, are here with you tonight, sitting over there or sitting behind you. So to acknowledge their contribution and thank them for it, I'm now going to ask you to do a couple of things. Graduates, would you now please stand? Now I'd like you to put your degrees on the seats behind you so that your hands are free, and I'd like you to turn around to face your families and your friends. And now I invite you to give them a mighty round of applause. Well, now, graduates, you can pick up your degrees. We don't want you leaving them behind. And you can turn around, but don't sit down because we'll be leaving in just a moment. Here on the dais, of course, are representatives of our academic staff who have also supported you throughout your journey, and I'm sure you'd like to thank them as well. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the official party will now leave the graduation hall through the centre aisle and will be followed by all the graduates. I would invite you all to now please stand and please remain standing until the last of the graduates have processed out. And then I invite all of you to join us in the marquee overlooking the lake for some light refreshments. Well, graduates, I wish you the very best for the future. And in the words of the old Irish blessing, may the road rise up to meet you. May the wind always be at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face and rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. Graduates, congratulations and good luck.